house. I truly appreciate, we truly appreciate that you came, and of course the speakers. Today we have William Pomeranz, the senior fellow of and a former director of Kennan Institute of the Wilson Center. He has provided expert commentary during pivotal moments such as Russia's constitutional overhaul of 2020 and the invasion of Ukraine through Wilson Center's panel and various media outlets. His insights illuminate how legal framework both reflect and shape the state power, a perspective that bridges U.S. constitutional dialogue and the evolution of the dream of the self-rule. And also we have Igor Slabykh. He is the manager director of the Building for Democracy Foundation and a lawyer with expertise in both Russian and American law. He practiced law in Russia after graduating from Moscow State Open University in 2003. He earned his master's in law from George Washington University Law School, and now based in the United States. Igor educates a Russian-speaking audience about the U.S. legal system through his YouTube channel and his Telegram channel, U.S. Legal News. Thank you for coming. So today, we envisioned it more of like an informal discussion with some foreword from our guests, our speakers, and the topic would be how the United States over the years, over decades and centuries now, has managed to stay so resilient and stable as a state and as a system. And I can say for myself, I'll say a few words. When I came to this country, I went through the whole spectrum of the detachment and all the stages of grief. So, hatred, love, astonishment, and then acceptance. And then when I accepted it, I really loved the system. I really began to enjoy it, and I began to believe in it, and I still believe in it. I think it's still working, and it's still very hard to shake. But the recent development challenged my opinion, but I still believe in it. So I would turn it over to our speakers. Maybe they can say a few words. And then after that, I have a few questions, just a few, and then maybe we can continue discussions with you guys involved as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It allowed me to review a lot of U.S. constitutional law that I don't normally do every day. But I was really grateful for the opportunity. And in terms of the topic of stability and stability in the United States, I will highlight three things, but obviously there are a lot more that can be discussed. But I think one of the things that makes the United States very stable is its emphasis on civil society. And I've worked for the National Endowment for Democracy for 7 years, and I was trying to be the Pied Piper of civil society in Russia. I don't know if I succeeded or not, but it was always one of the things that was emphasized, that was something that Russia really lacked, and trying to build the institutions for civil society was very difficult. The second thing that I want to emphasize is the notion of federalism. I think that's been getting a bad rap, as it were, but the idea that somehow there are multiple levels of power and levers of power makes the United States a very stable country, because there's lots of opportunities to engage in government. You can like it, you cannot like it, but the idea that somehow federalism is a crucial component of the rule of law and our legal system and our political system is very important. And the third thing I'll mention, and I will emphasize and since this is we are on the cusp of July 4th, I will emphasize the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights actually contains so much and was so wise when they adopted them in terms of basically right to defense, freedom of assembly, all these things. They were very prescient that they would be under attack at various points in the United States. And so I was able to, as I said, to look over the Bill of Rights, all the 10 amendments of the Bill of Rights, and I think that the fact that they exist and have existed for now 250 years is a great sense, it brings us a sense of stability as to what the law is and what our rights are.
Hi, first of all, I would like to say thank you to the organizers, to the Russian House, and like my separate pleasure to be a panelist with Mr. Pomeranz, whom I believe the most knowledgeable professional like in Russia, in DC. So thank you very much, Mr. Pomeranz, for this. Well, obviously, I can compare the United States only with Russia because I lived most of my life in Russia, and I have been living in the United States like for the last 9 years. And before this, I lived in Russia. I practiced law in Russia, so that's why I can compare with Russia. But based on that we are in the Russian House, I think it's okay. And I mostly agree with Mr. Pomeranz that the United States, the country has some things that Russia doesn't have. First of all, that's Americans, they're freedom lovers. And as Mr. Pomeranz mentioned about power, so in the United States, the power is spread all along, not even if we can read another thing, some time ago I was discussing difference between Canada and the United States with one Canadian guy, and he said, well, you know, here in Canada we trust our government and we think that government knows better. But in the United States, Americans, they're saying, hell no, government knows better. So, and this is another thing, because in Russia, a lot of people, they believe that government knows better. And if Putin says something, so this is truth, this is like you cannot disagree with it, something like this. So this is difference. Another thing about society, about like the society in Russia and in the United States, the point is that in Russia, the society is very atomized. So you do not see people can do a lot of things together. And when I came to the United States, it was actually unexpectedly for me to see that people believe in communities. Small communities, medium communities, big communities, and there is a conception to give back to the community. I believe that Russians don't have it back in Russia. So I believe these are like the base of the United States. And again, I agree that United States had founding fathers. And every time when I'm thinking about this, actually, this is incredible. So even if we speak about Russia and we take like the 20th century, Russia, like Soviet Union, had, I don't remember, 4 or 5 constitutions for one century. If we take the last constitution, the current constitution, so it was adopted in 1993, and since then it has a lot of changes. And what are the difference between changes in the United States constitutions and Russian constitutions? United States, if we are speaking about Bill of Rights, it provides a lot of power to people, a lot of rights to people. But if we speak about Russian constitution and amendments there, it take the rights back to the government. And this is the difference. And speaking about founding fathers, every time when I'm thinking that 250 years ago, several people wrote rule of the games, and these rules of the games are still in place, and they work, and they worked, they are working, and they will work, I hope. These rules of the game did not provide opportunity to anybody to have like power, to grab power, to be like an authoritarian leader in the United States. So yeah, founding fathers, actually, these are, I don't know, present to the United States.
Okay, we kind of segued into my question here. So I think Russia does have a founding father, which is one. It's Peter the Great. So in reality, United States and Russia are, in a historical sense, very similar in age, only about 50 years. Russian Empire is 1721. And United States is 1776. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, the independent. Yeah. But they were founded on very different principles. Russia at the time, or Russian Empire rather, at the time was founded on authoritarianism, which is normal for that period of time. It was a peak of authoritarianism and monarchy. United States was founded on democracy, and they're both kind of artificial states in a sense that Russia, the Peter the Great, he broke everything, built anew. In United States, building on everything they had, they also build anew. They adopted a new constitution. So do you think that maybe the resilience hides in that source where Russia was built on authoritarianism and still continues that path and that trend? In United States was built on democracy, and no matter what happens, that still lays as a base of the foundation of the state, of the country.
Well, I'll just make a few comments on that. Yes, Russia was founded on statist and imperial institutions. And I think in many ways that is the only way that Russia has figured out how to hold a multinational empire together. And the United States, in comparison, the word state really doesn't appear in any of our founding documents. The only thing that we have are a notion of separation of powers, but the state as a single entity, as what is called in Russia a unified state with only one level of power, that is an anathema to the United States. And so I think that the notion of statehood, which has ruled Russia for 300 plus years, is a real distinction between the United States and Russia, because the United States has not really led with the notion of a unitary state or a unified executive, although that is now in question.
Well, so I think that this basement of like Russian Empire. That is one thing. Another thing, like the whole history of Russia. If we look at this, is there any period of time in Russia when Russia was free? I believe maybe early 90s. That's all. Gorbachev, exactly. And that's all. And maybe like Novgorod Republic, that was, I don't know, 1,100, something like, yeah, very, so it's a very old story. Then we had Tatars, and actually I believe that so we have this Tatar ego, I don't know how to call this in English, but yeah. So, and it was like for 3 centuries. And I believe this is the reason why the Russians now, they are mostly Asian than European. And again, when Peter the Great decided to rebuild the country, anyway, he rebuilt the country based on his understanding and based on this authoritarian regime and the empire. And that's why, like, I believe that Russians do not have habit for freedom. And yeah, because of Peter the Great, because of all other Tsars, or and even for Soviet Union, if we speak about these secretaries of Communist Party, it is the same, because the concept was the same. Maybe like from formal point of view, if we look at Soviet Union constitution, we saw like words about democracy, about elections, something like this. But in real life, Lenin, Stalin, Brezhnev, everybody, they were like Soviet Union Tsars. So that's why I believe this is the main difference with the United States, that was built on the idea of freedom, and that was built after the successful attempt to stop monarchy from Great Britain. So,
does anybody in the audience have anything to say about this? Okay.
Very humbly, thank you for letting us be here. Larry Harvey, I would say this whether you agree or not, but I say it respectfully and humbly. This country has stayed together here because of our faith-based communities, because of our beliefs in faith and our religious beliefs. And that's what makes us stronger and makes us the greatest country still on earth today. It's our faith based from the heart. God bless you.
and I agree with you, because what surprised me a lot what me surprised when I just came to the United States, even when you're like driving through a small town, you see a lot of churches. You cannot find this in Russia. And yeah, I agree.
That's the base.
Actually, I have a comment regarding the point that both of you, Mr. Pomeranz and Mr. Slabykh, stated. You state that American people are lovers of freedom, and I was fully agree. I would be fully agree with each of you. I would say before January, when it was inauguration. Anyway, so I work for government, and you know how stressful is government employee currently. But my major observation is that I am even shocked how people behave there. They keep their mouths shut. Even in social media like LinkedIn, in which I have a big network of my friends, colleagues in FDA, both in science I'm scientist. People do say nothing. They keep, everything is good, blah, 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 which highly resembles me the time when I was in USSR and people were behaving very similarly. So how quick the people actually converted them, actually not, it's not conversion, but it was conversion of behavior. It's highly resemblant to behavior we had in Soviet. I felt like a time machine. I'm back in USSR. Wow, this is my comment.
Well, I just think I haven't given up on the United States yet, and I think that we will now see how galvanized people will be going forward, and there is every anticipation that as long as we have elections and as long as we have turnover, that we will be able to overcome all those problems that you've mentioned. And so I think the January uprising was a major event in US history. And essentially it has not, we have not learned the lesson of those days. And the idea that somehow that they were all freedom fighters as opposed to anarchists is not how I see what happened on that day.
Yeah. Well, you know, I totally understand what you are talking about. And based on my conversations with a lot of Americans, like Americans, not Russian Americans, but Americans, American Americans. So as far as I understand what they see, like the main idea is that, okay, there is democracy in the United States, and in 4 years we will vote the president that we don't like out. But we, like Russian Americans, we understand that sometimes it does not work. And that is why we are afraid. So let's see, I hope that, because my first belief, what we see right now, that Congress actually has abandoned its power and its power to limit president and executive branch. But we see that courts, not all of the courts, but anywhere courts, they are trying to maintain this rule of law. So that's why I hope that everything will be okay. But we will see. But I totally understand you, and I totally understand all people from Russia who are nervous.
Okay, Ralph Winnie with the Eurasia Center. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Oh, okay. Just to follow up on Larry Harvey's point, I think one of the unique aspects of our American Revolution is that it gave the political authority, it placed it in the hands of the American people, which is a very unusual when you look at revolutions. Wanted to ask about someone like an Alexander Solzhenitsyn. When I was growing up, he became one of my heroes. My mother made me read The Cancer Ward, The Gulag Archipelago. She felt it was important to understand the intersection of human rights, peace building, and it made me want to go to Russia and be able to study at his institution, Moscow State University, which I did. And one of the things that I found when I was in Russia is that there are many people that I think are looking at different alternatives, and they're looking at peace building, even just setting up a regular business, but they don't have the funding or support from the government. If you're a small business owner in Russia, there's no funding for a mentor for startups. There's no mentor-mentee program. The government focuses on huge conglomerates. And with my work at the Eurasia Center prior to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we love to work with Russian delegations that came over, young Russian entrepreneurs looking for partners, looking to understand the benefits of American capitalism. And somehow this message is getting through to them on a very domestic level, but the government seems to want to prevent any kind of opposition or small business entrepreneurship as a way to stay in control. Yet someone like Alexander Solzhenitsyn is well respected by the Mikhail Gorbachev. It seems like Russia went off the rail after Gorbachev. What can be done to bring the young Russian entrepreneur into the fold and to create a dynamic where the government is supportive of small and medium-sized enterprises, which is the hallmark of the United States, as you've seen when you've been here?
Okay, that's okay. So that's a difficult question. First of all, I think that we can do nothing while Russia is attacking Ukraine. Because otherwise we need to start doing something like to lift sanctions, for example, or something like this. I don't think that it's possible. So if we have the situation, well, when something has changed in future, I think that education, I was attending a meeting with Stanislav Shushkevich, who was the head of Belarus, and he signed Belarus Accords. And he was asked, it was like 2016, I believe, and he was asked, so the situation in Belarus, how it can be changed. And at that time, he lived in Poland. He was like, he had to live in Poland. And he said, well, the only way that I see is education. And I believe that in Russia, it's the same, education. Because education not only like, okay, how to do business, how to start business, how to do venture capitalism and something like this. But in general, education means to open the United States, because a lot of people in Russia, they have access to internet, but they also have a lot of propaganda around them about this ugly America who is doing something bad, something like this, and a lot of people, they believe in this. And I personally know a lot of people who believe. So I believe that first thing, like general approach, is to open the United States and to show that there is no any magic in prosperity. That's just, let's say, rule of law. That's respect for business. Because another thing in Russia, that a lot of people, they do not respect like businessmen, because they think that business is something like dirty, that's something wrong. Sure. It's better to go to have salary and something like this, and not start a new business. So
you were a saboteur almost.
Yeah. So first of all, in general, to show to the Russians like benefits of capitalism and democracy, and then to teach how to start business, how to do business, what are the best practices of business in the United States, and to show that you can implement them in Russia and it will work.
So I agree that this subject is moot until the sanctions lift, because there's no ability to have foreign investment in Russia, and that's all the responsibility for Putin. And before there's any attempt to bring foreign investment back, they are going to have to deal, Russia will have to deal with all the companies that they have expropriated, all the Western companies, from Starbucks and McDonald's and so forth, are going to have to deal with that. And I have no idea how long that legal process will be, but it will be a very long process. And there will not be a flood like there was in the 1990s. The cowboys that came and so forth, they will not come because there is not an environment that supports business. And so even though we may want that to happen, and I agree, I actually practiced law for a couple, 2 years in Moscow, and I can safely say that I had just the best colleagues and the best lawyers, and I really enjoyed that experience. And there was a push by all these Western law firms and so forth to get these Russians up to speed. And so at the firm I was with, I think we had three Russian lawyers that had gotten masters in tax at NYU.
Oh, okay.
And so that was what happened. And obviously there's a lot of reasons why it didn't work and so forth. But if that is ever going to change, it's going to have to change with the leadership of the Russian Federation that wants to encourage foreign investment. I just was reading today that the prosecutor's office is basically taking over factories now. I don't think the prosecutor's office is really adept at running a business. They can steal a business, but they're not adept at running a business. And so all these problems are just mushrooming. And I don't think that there's going to be a real change until there's a change in leadership in the Russian Federation.
Thank you. I just 1 second. We're drifting a little bit off topic because, and I'm going to try to bring us a little bit back. So with all of we're talking a lot about changes in Russia, in Russian Federation, and the Russian Empire. And in my experience or my research as a person who enjoys history, every country, every state needs to go through major overhauls, roughly every 100 years. Plus minus. You know, in United States, it was Emancipation Proclamation, Teddy Roosevelt's social reforms, then Franklin Roosevelt's very much social forward and other reforms. In Russia, it was Decembrists, which largely failed. It was early 19th century, the 20th of the 19th century, and then, you know, emancipation of the serfs in the 60s of 1800s, and then the 1905 revolution, which Russia never recovered from. So I would like to ask that United States, over all of these overhauls, stayed stable and reinvented itself, kept reinventing itself, kept adjusting with Martin Luther King and all of that, the sexual revolution, all this. Russia, after beginning of the 20th century, it began to shake violently and ultimately failed and reinvented in a different way or became something else. So do you think that the Constitution of the United States served as that base, you know, that cornerstone that United States kind of bounced off and worked with? And it was, you know, what kept the country together, because in Russia, they didn't have a constitution. Authoritarian state does not have a constitution. That's just, you can't have it. The Tsar is the constitution. There were laws, but they were for little people. So do you think that constitution in the United States played a role, or maybe pivotal role, significant role?
It played a crucial role. And you're right that Russia's inability to create a constitution that is supported by the whole population is a real problem, and that has never actually occurred. So now that I have more free time on my hands, I am looking at the attempt of the provisional government in 1917 to create a constitution, to have legal reform. The provisional government gets a bad rap because it did not win, but the provisional government essentially, for example, introduced the first truth commission of the 20th century, where they basically tried all the czarist officials for their actions and tried to hold them accountable. The provisional government also introduced major legislation through a variety of bodies that tried to change the legal framework of the Russian Federation, of Russia and the Russian Empire. Obviously, it did not succeed, but I'm finding that the provisional government had a lot more depth and opportunity than that has basically been given to by historians.
First of all, like early constitutions was the topic of my first research paper in the university back in Russia. So, speaking about the Russian constitution, well, respectfully, I do not agree that Russia doesn't have constitution. It has constitution, but it does not follow the constitution. Why Russia does not follow the constitution? Because there are judges in the Supreme Court and in the Constitutional Court of Russia who do not care about the constitution. If you read a lot of decisions, legal opinions of Russian judges, they just don't care. And this is what I'm scared about here in the United States. I believe that the American Constitution, the American Constitution has proved that it can be a very strong basis. Like it is the basis for 250 years. So everything is okay with it. But I'm afraid, like having this experience back in Russia, that as soon as American judges stop following the Constitution, and as soon as American judges will follow the desire of executive branch, America will have a problem. But I hope, again, that the Constitution will not allow to do this. So, but we will see.
Follow up on that one. Okay, so I think one of the surprises of this new Trump administration is that basically the United States is following 300 years of Russian history and is ruling by decree. And so these decrees keep coming and coming and coming. They're not approved by the legislature. They don't have they aren't actually laws in terms of how we create a law. And so if we continue down that road of ruling by decree and ruling without legislation, we will begin to falter, because we will not actually be a rule of law country. We will just be a country that is ruled by decree. And if that becomes the case.
What specifically are you referring to? You could educate us. What specifically are these executive orders?
So Trump has, I don't know how many executive orders Trump has introduced, but I think they're in the hundreds. Is that right? What's that? 200.
But is that a difference from previous administrations?
Right. That
Yes.
was going to be my next
Yes.
Or
point.
is it a matter of publicity?
It is different. I believe that it is different from other administrations. Obviously, other presidents have used the power of executive orders for a whole variety of issues, to integrate schools in the United States and so forth. It's not that other presidents have used the power of executive decrees.
Okay.
The question is whether we actually rule by laws and the use of laws, or simply it is an executive action that doesn't have to get through Congress, doesn't have to be pursued, put down in law. And if indeed that is the way we're going, then I think that our notion of the rule of law, just as Russia's notion of ruling by decree, will undermine our rule of law.
So did this disturb you when Obama started it moving forward?
I am not an expert on every executive decree of going in the past. The only thing I've noticed is a reliance on executive action, executive decrees, to a much larger degree than other administrations have relied on executive decrees. And how, as a constitutional republic, we deal with that will be a very important decision. Because if indeed we have executive decrees that nullify constitutional amendments, I think that will be a...
You have some that are questionable under the Constitution, and the courts are looking at that.
So again, if we're talking about the stability of the United States and the constitutional system, if indeed we cease to become a government of laws and just become a government of executive actions, I believe that that will be a real turning point in our democracy and our ability to maintain the rule of law.
Make just a small comment about who started this, Obama or not. There is an expression that life is not mathematics, and that's why 2 minuses does not give us plus. So I would separate this. Okay, if Obama did something wrong, if Biden did something wrong, it does not mean that Trump can do something allegedly wrong. I mean, let's not mix this.
Yeah, one comment quick. When you have executive actions which are closing down institutions which Congress gave funding for, and there are courts saying these must stay open, and the response of the executive branch is to keep the offices closed and to continue paying the Voice of America journalists to not work until they can actually close down the institution. That's something that's fundamentally different from anything I know of in American history. That's a comment off to the side. A question. In the 1830s, Alexis de Tocqueville comes to America, and he writes a book about it. And he talks about America being a nation of joiners, this civil society that both of you touched on, which exists in America, flourishes in the United States, and never developed in Russia, despite some of your efforts. Why didn't it develop in Russia?
Okay. Well, again, I'm going back to the history, and well, there are values of the Russian people, and you cannot change these values very like in a fast way. You have to spend like decades to change the values. And again, I mentioned that the only period of time when Russia was really free was, well, I don't know, 1990 till maybe 1999, something like this. So 10 years, something like this. It is not enough to change values. As soon as we cannot change values of the Russian people, we will fail again, even if we like try to do something in future without changing the values. And that's why, for example, my position that I am very skeptic about the Russian future, because even if Putin dies today, nothing will change, because there are millions, tens of millions people with the values that allow, for example, to invade another country, and who are happy to invade another country. And you cannot change this just like this. You had to spend a lot of time. And I don't know how to do this because, again, if we speak about, I don't know, like fascist Germany, the country was destroyed and then rebuilt. But in Russia, you cannot do this due to the nuclear weapons. So I don't know. But the reason I believe that this attempt was unsuccessful is values and history of the country in general. So too few time we had.
Yes, I agree that we are in unprecedented waters by having the a decree close down government agencies. That has not happened before. So I think that yes, that will be studied for a while, optimistically. Is that legal? And my fear is that the Supreme Court will not use its powers, despite its now immense powers, to deal with this as well. That they are not looking to kind of re-engage with federal governments and federal laws, and that I think that there is a good chance, that the Supreme Court will abdicate its responsibility and not deal with these types of issues.
Yeah, I have two questions. As Raj, yeah. As the moderator said in the beginning, I have enormous confidence in the US system. Jan 6th did not shake my confidence. Even the current administration, what it has been doing in terms of executive orders and taking so many issues to the Supreme Court. Having said that, okay. In the midterm elections, highly likely the House is going to flip. Is there anything Trump could do to not have elections? My question to you. My question to you is, in the US, for example, anybody's oath is to the Constitution, whether you are a police officer, a judge, military man, right, an elected official. How is it in Russia? Is it to the fatherland, or is it to the Constitution?
We can go back to Ukraine if we want to, but
today is the U.S. statehood.
So America has a brilliant history of, in times of war, to have elections. And the most important one, I think, is the Civil War, where basically everyone thought that Lincoln was going to lose and that they would not support the continuation of the war. And so we have a glorious history of always having elections. Indeed, if you want to make any predictions, I would think that there would be an election in 2004, 2008, 2012, and there's nothing to think that they would not happen on a regular basis. But if indeed there is an attempt not to have an election, then our constitutional system will be in grave danger.
Speaking about the Russian Constitution, so, well, actually, it doesn't make sense to discuss how the Russian Constitution works, because the court that has a case, civil case or criminal case, it doesn't matter. It will say anything the court wants. I believe, like several years ago, I wrote an article for Institute of Modern Russia, and the title was something like "How Russian Courts Invent Reality." And this is exactly how Russian courts behave. They don't care what was going on. They don't care who is right, who is wrong. As soon as you have government as a defendant or plaintiff, the court will just repeat everything that government is saying. So, okay, we can discuss in theory how it should work if the constitution works, but in real life, like it doesn't matter because judges do not want to see the facts. They have only one desire: to do something to show that the government is right, the government was correct. And that's why all the court decisions about this.
Yes, okay, how's this? Would the government and the citizens of Russia responded to differently from Putin's warmongering territorial expansion ideas if they had a belief that in Ukraine, behind every blade of grass, there would be a rifle? Could that have made a difference in some fashion, as it did on the psyche of the Japanese in the Second World War?
Actually, the answer to your question can be done only by Putin, because Russians do not care what Putin, they do not care what will be in Ukraine. They just care about what Putin is saying. So as soon as Putin...
Who are having a real struggle today, is when I read the headlines.
Yeah, they have struggle, but anyway, a lot of people, they're going to army, to Russian army, to participate, to have money, and so on. So, like, I do not think that it would change something.
Psychological effect?
For example, right now, there are a lot of facts about people who died, like Russian people who died. There are a lot of facts about the real reasons of this war, that it is not what Putin is saying. But everybody doesn't care. This is the tragic of the Russian people. Everybody doesn't care. They think, again, that government knows better. We are small people. We don't have a lot of experience. We don't have a lot of ideas, but our great leader, he knows better. So that's why I don't believe that something would change unless Putin decided that, okay, I just don't want to go there, because like again, we don't know the truth, but there were a lot of discussions that FSB, like Russian former KGB, they reported to Putin that everybody will be happy in Ukraine as soon as Russians will be there. So I don't know, but the only person who will decide, who would decide, just Putin, not the Russian people.
I absolutely agree that this is a war of Vladimir Putin, and he is the one who instigated this. And I just want to, I'm not a military person, and I don't follow military affairs with great detail, but there are really certain warning signs for the Russian military that it's not going well. Now, there are warning signs about the Ukrainian military. It's not going well. But Ukrainians have a reason to fight, and Russians don't have a reason to fight. Other than coercion and the Stalinist system that, you know, the front line is there, the guns are, the FSB is over here, go attack. So I think that if indeed Europe can maintain at least a semblance of support for Ukraine, because clearly now the United States will not do that, regrettably. But I think that if indeed the Europeans keep Ukraine in the battlefield, that there will potentially, and this may be more optimistic than reality, but the Russian army will collapse. And I should add that the Russian army has collapsed several times in Russian history. So not that this is World War I or World War II, but they have really kind of demonstrated their incapacity to wage war. Afghanistan, yeah. There was a nice editorial in today's Washington Post by Tara Mirza, and I think that he is arguing, and the Europeans are arguing, that at the end of this war, there must be some sort of accountability for Putin and the Russian state. War crimes, yes. War crimes, crimes against humanity, all these things are now on the table. And the Europeans are basically forcing the world to make sure that somehow at the end of this war, there is a reckoning for the Russian Federation.
Small comments about the reasons why Russians they want to participate in this war, because well, most of Russians they live very like poorly. They're poor people. I mean, poor in terms of like prosperity, and Putin did not make their lives better, but he provided great idea to them. You live poorly, but we are fighting fascism. Everybody here, I believe, understands that this is bullshit. Bullshit. But Russian people from small villages, from small cities, they believe that we are fighting fascism as our grandparents did, and that is why I need to go to participate in this war, especially taking into account that the government will pay me money so much that I will never earn in my small village. So that's why, like, Putin understands Russians. So that's very sad. That's very cynical. But I believe this is true.
Okay. Please don't chastise me for that question or that comment. I'm going to bring it again back into our topic. So it's kind of straight of a Star Wars lore where the Republic turns into an empire eventually, right? It took about 300 years for the Roman Republic to turn into an empire. Some people argue 500, but from the dissolution of Latin League, it's about 300 years, 330, about 350. And it seems to be, it could be maybe a logical step. Concentration of power, it makes sense. So do you think, and it has nothing to do with Trump, don't think about it. As a person who loves history, I look at trends, I don't look at personalities. So do you think that maybe United States is organically moving to a direction of an empire, of a concentrated power, and of concentrating power first within the country and maybe spreading it to other territories, because United States is an empire, it's an economic empire, it's a great cultural empire, probably the world has never seen yet to this day. So do you think that could be an issue that we could be moving into this direction there?
Well, founding fathers would not agree with you.
Well, I'm sure, and I hope, again, I don't want this to happen, personally, my opinion, but could this be maybe an organic evolvement, organic, thing to go towards historically? Again, it's a historical pattern. It's been proven over, I don't know, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years now. So
yeah, but again, we have check and balances that prevent the United States from going this way. So I hope that the constitution, the check and balances, they will not allow to go this way, even if historically it is like a right thing to do, because it's difficult to say for me because I'm not a historian, I'm a lawyer.
Well, the United States has an empire. It is based on the strength of the dollar. That it is an economic empire, but that is the strength, yes, of our currency. And if indeed we gut the currency, or if we basically decide that we go into such significant debt that the currency isn't really a world power, and no one wants our dollars, then the United States' ability to become and to remain as the essential power will be diminished.
Okay, does anybody else have a comment about the empire?
Just comment about the point how Russians support or not support the war. Of course, we understand they are just subjected to strong propaganda, brainwashing. Anyway, just example, I have a relative, pretty simple-minded person. In 2022, when the war began, she said, I am with my country, I support my country. Okay. Next year, 2023, her attitude was, I don't care, I don't know, I don't want to know anything, I live with my private life. Definitely some evolution. In recent time, she said, I'm against this war, but I don't want to speak about it. Interesting. Something still happening with people.
Anybody else please have a comment, question?
Yeah, ultimately, I think it comes down to the court system. People feel that they can go to court, lay out objective evidence, and that their case is going to be looked at objectively. They're going to have confidence in the system, whether it's United States, Russia, or anywhere in Europe. The key is to strengthen and support the court system to make sure the courts do not become a banana type of republic.
Absolutely agree, because as I said, what is going on in Russia, and for many years that the courts, they just don't want to support anybody beyond like government plaintiffs or defendants.
Yeah. So, what was I going to say?
Yeah, we're gonna.
That's coming. That's coming. That's coming. Not to worry.
Yeah.
But the court system in the United States, again, has been diminished, and I think we can talk about whether precedent is a good idea or a bad idea.
Tell us how it's been diminished.
How it's been diminished? That the, well, basically, many of the stare decisis decisions, such as abortion and so forth, have been overturned. Now, that is the Supreme Court's right. They don't have to follow stare decisis. However, they all said that they were going to follow stare decisis when they were being nominated, and of course, they just abandoned it as soon as they could. So I think that there is a problem of precedent. There is a problem of precedent of the courts being too powerful and getting ahead of society. And basically, there is the issue of the decision of Judge Roberts to basically give executive officers immunity. And they didn't even ask the question of immunity.
So my question is, how do we make sure that judges do not believe themselves to be gods and are somewhat held accountable to ensure that their rulings are based on looking at objective evidence as opposed to already having the decision made when you come to the court?
Well, that's the Russia example.
Okay.
And I think that the U.S. judicial system has benefited when judges have made precedent or made law. So I would not basically say that they shouldn't have that power, although obviously it's not a power that's directly in the Constitution, but is in the common law that we adopted from Great Britain. But the idea that somehow we will follow the law, that is no longer, I think, an objective. When the Supreme Court, when it has the majority, and the standard line is it's not right because it's right because it's the Supreme Court. And so that is, I think, a problem going forward about whether this notion of precedent and so forth will continue to be followed, and whether and how many times or how much it will be disregarded going forward.
And just a little comment, why I'm optimistic about the US judges, because I know how judges in Russia works, but Russian judges and American judges, especially like federal judges, they are two different types of people, because most time in Russia, how you became a judge, you can be a clerk for many, many years. You will have very, very small salary. You will be like, you have very small position, but maybe in 15 or 20 years, you became a judge. Another path to judge in Russia, that's being a prosecutor or investigator. And so as soon as these former clerks became a judge, they know nothing, they don't have money, and they are ready to do everything they will be told by Chief Justice, like of the court. In the United States, you know that the situation is much better. So that's why I believe that the judges themselves in the United States will help to save the Constitution and independent judiciary.
All right. Yes, thank you very much. This is Ben Bangra with the Eurasia Center of America. Why is it hard for Russia to follow the Western type of democracy? That's the first question. And second question is based on what the panelists just said, the weakening of the judiciary system. How is likely the process, how possible is that again for Mr. Trump? Is he likely to achieve his goal of an imperial type of presidency based on the current situation of the court in the United States?
So as to the first question, why it is difficult to Russian to follow, well, actually, because Putin doesn't want Russians to follow the law, because otherwise he wouldn't have any opportunity to influence like the political system. He understands that as soon a judge will do everything Putin wants, everything will be okay. Because if he wants to fire like governor, or if he wants to fire like, I don't know, like any person in the country, everything will be okay. Or as soon as Putin wants to, for example, nationalize a factory that belongs to foreign businessman, everything will be okay, because this judge will say, everything is okay, Mr. President, you are right. But the judges, they understand, if I can violate the law in this case, so it means that I will be able to violate the law in other cases. And some of these cases will be very good paid by defendant or plaintiff. So that's why it doesn't make any sense for the political system to achieve judges to follow the law. As to the second question, I think that Mr. Pomeranz will, will be.
Well, I have one answer, and that is why is the Russian legal system different? And I would argue that it's not a common law system, but it is a civil law system. And the civil law tradition, which goes back to Germany and basically doesn't allow the judge to be a legislator, but basically to follow the law as written. And that has been the mindset, I believe, of Russian law and Russian legal tradition. And basically that they have not been able, or maybe they don't want to. And quite frankly, when I practice and I talk to my German buddies, they said, you know, this idea of precedent is just a crazy idea, and it just shouldn't happen at all, because that's not what the role of the judge is. He is not a lawmaker, and so I think that the last thing I'll say is, you know, after the end of World War II, when obviously all the crimes had been committed by Germany, it still had the notion of a civil law country. And that was what was able to restore German jurisprudence and was the main reason why Germany was able to make a transition back.
They took all the rights away initially, but because they had the civil law system in place, it was easier to restore.
Yes, and there's a great tradition in German jurisprudence of civil law. And they got plenty of manifestos and codes and so forth that they can turn to. And so they actually turned to that. But Russia did not have. Russia had Soviet law, and that was not really a...
Show me the man, I'll show you the crime.
There you go.
Or Alfred Dreyfus, France.
Yeah.
The question was with the Trump. Basically, the question to the comment that I made is it an organic way to move?
I think if you believe what Trump wants to do, he wants to create a unitary executive. And a unitary executive goes against all of our traditions of separation of powers. So if he's able and is given the ability to have a unitary executive, that will be a real detriment to the rule of law going forward.
You're saying he's governing by fiat.
Can he do? Well, you know, I keep saying he can't do certain things, and yet it all happens. So who am I to say that he's out of his league or can't do this?
Well, that's why the courts will step in if he oversteps his bounds.
We hope. We hope that the courts will step in, and what was Stalin's question? The comment? You know, how many
About election.
No, about how many troops the. How many divisions has the Pope? Yeah, how many divisions has the Pope? There you go.
Okay, it's getting heated over here. Do you have any more comments to our speakers? I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you very much. I hope this new little bit of engaging format was interesting. And please don't forget to donate. There's QR codes posted. Please do. We kind of, you know, live and exist on your donations. So thank you very much for that. And thank you, speakers, Pomeranz and Slabykh. Yeah, thank you very much. It was great, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I saw you came.